and it let out this blood-curdling, guttural scream.
On the side of the road, he sees a deer carcass and something eating on it, which he thought was a bear. And as the lights hit it, it stood up. And, like, this gives me chills talking about it. He said it stood up and it had the face of a man.
Hey, everybody. Bryan Sawyer coming at you. The Bigfoots of America podcast show, episode 34. Oh, my gosh. So I finally got this guy on my podcast show. He's known as the Tennessee Bigfoot Man, Darrell Denton. I've only been deep into this for about 5 years, but this guy's a lifer. So I'm not going to talk, man. We're going to go ahead and bring him in because I just want to learn, learn, learn. So let's go ahead, bring Darrell in. Hey, Darrell, you there?
Hey, I'm here, yeah.
Oh my gosh, man. So you started talking before we got recording, and I'm like, it's reminding me, that's right. I've only really been deep into this for about 5 years now. This is one of the lifers. This is what you're a guy I look up to, man. I follow you online and I pay attention to what you're doing and try to emulate that out of respect because this is no joke to us. This subject of Bigfoot is no joke to us. This is a very serious subject to those who've had sightings and encounters, experiences, any kind of paranormal stuff. This is the cherry on top, right up there with UFOs. So I just want to jump into it, Darrell. This is your episode. And like I said backstage, I'm going to want you back for a second episode. My episodes are anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour long. I like to keep them short. I work midnights, always got to run out the door. But man, I'm going to shut up now. And I want you to talk about what Darrell Denton wants to talk about, man. So go ahead. It's a pleasure having you on the show. And thank you for being so very patient with me and getting you on. So go ahead.
Well, I mean, first of all, let me say that I'm very honored that you had me on, and I'm just a guy that's had a lot of experiences and encounters, not by choice, but it just seemed to happen that way. From my first experience in November the 6th of 1992, about 28 foot up in a tree, deer hunting on my grandfather's farm, deep in. I mean, deep in the woods, a place I'd never been before there. And my first encounter was then, and it was about around 8 o'clock in the morning, and it completely changed my life forever. And, if any time you glance or see one of these creatures, it's life changing. But when one comes out of a cane thicket to the left of you, and jumps across a 12-foot creek with one leap and walks down the Jane Trail and stares right at you up in a tree. And I'm kind of overlooking him because I'm on a 45-degree mountainside in a tree. And he starts growling and shows me his teeth several times and lets me know real quick that he doesn't want me there. And I'd never seen anything like that in my life. So I don't know that I didn't believe in them. I just didn't think they were in Tennessee. So I thought if they were around, they were out in the Pacific Northwest or British Columbia. But they're everywhere now. I've learned so much since then. It's been, my gosh, 30-something years ago now. And I've become an active, real serious researcher and experiencer about 7 years after that. It really I don't scare very easy. I never have. I mean, I've been in the woods with bears and everything else you can think of, and some things I didn't know what they were, but nothing like what I'd seen that day. So it changed my life forever. My grandfather, when I got back to the house, running over 3 hills and nearly a mile, and he knew what I'd seen when I told him, but he'd never told me about them. But he didn't want me to be frightened of the woods. And of course, I might have been if I'd known those things were out there, because this was the meanest, ugliest looking thing I've ever seen. And I've never seen anything that mean or ugly since. And I've seen a lot of these creatures since then. There's a whole lot of different types. I've seen four dog men, the full body of the dog man. I've seen other ones in brush and parts of them, and Bigfoot the same way, and forest people, which I think are a little different. But anyway, it's been an experience. I was just telling you a minute ago. My team for quite a while. Martin Groves has been my best friend for over 45 years, and he and I've been researching into LBL. He had his first encounter 4 months after mine. And at that time, I was a mayor of my area, and he was a chief deputy sheriff. And we couldn't just go telling everybody we'd seen a Bigfoot or a dog man. A dog man tried to kill him and his partner in the LBL in April of '93, and just so happened that we had each other to talk to. We'd go to lunch and talk about this stuff and try to relieve ourselves a little bit from the stress it put on our mind. And it was so life changing. I didn't go into the woods for about 7 years. I went hunting, but I'd be in my truck in one of the farm fields that I owned, or my parents or my grandparents or friends. But it really had nightmares for months. Just really changed me. What it did to me. If I hadn't met the ones in around 1999, March of '99, on the Cumberland River in Tennessee, by pure accident, I was fishing. And I ran into another family of these creatures, and I thought, oh my gosh, I don't want to be around these things again. These were completely different than that one, but that one was what they call a wood booger, and just an evil, mean-looking creature. These were a little different looking than that, and they weren't aggressive or at all unfriendly. They were the three that I friended there for almost 5 years. Became very close to them, and that if that hadn't happened, I don't think I would have probably ever got over my first encounter, because I realized they're like people. There's good and bad in everything.
I need to hear all this, and I don't mean to cut you off, but like I
No,
tell
you're fine.
everybody,
You break in anytime you need to.
cool. I am just full of questions, my man. I have, sure, I've been the YouTuber and watching for the past, whatever, 10, 20 years, but haven't really gotten or dug deep into it until really even the past 3 to 5 years. We had things just kind of fell into place for me, and we had a Cass River sighting down here in Michigan, which I found out later was a farce. And people don't like hearing about that, but for me, if you got information that a sighting is a hoax, I want to know about it. I don't want to spread lies. There's enough information out there to respect people and try to stay legitimate about this subject. And for me, that started me rolling into the subject. And then I had a fairy encounter in my house. And
Wow.
like I tell everybody, I'm a father with two boys. I was a single dad. So we weren't sitting around watching Peter Pan or talking about fairies. We were guys and boys and playing ball and all that kind of stuff. So when a fairy was smack dab in front of my face, my paradigm shifted. I'm a born again Christian. I've got that background. But
Right.
then I said, okay, God, there's got to be a lot of information that I don't fully understand. And through a lot of prayer, he's been helping to open up my understanding. So, and then I've had an encounter with what you call, so you shocked me because you really made a point in discerning between the two. The wood booger, which is the meanest, scariest looking thing you said you've ever seen, and the forest people. Because I've had an encounter with what I would call forest people. Can you elaborate on those two distinct kinds of like a wood booger as in comparison to the forest people, so people at home get a broader
Well, I mean,
understanding?
in 1992, there weren't any YouTube channels. There wasn't any groups that you could be a part of to discuss any of this stuff. There weren't any radio shows about it. There wasn't anything about it except occasional Bigfoot show on TV for, a monster show or something like Unsolved Mysteries, that type of thing. But nobody really had anybody to talk to about it. People were just, quite frankly, really kind of frightened to tell anybody, because every time you mentioned it, people would ridicule you and think you're either crazy or you've been drinking or smoking something. And it was. I think the wood booger, and I didn't know really what I'd seen. I knew it was that type of creature. When I got back to the house, I was out of breath and I was literally terrified. I thought this thing was following me back to the house, my grandfather's rural area home in Woodbury, Tennessee, Cannon County, and he was 92 years old at that time, and he was in great health and looked like he was 65. But when I ran in the back door and just come in and sat down, I told him what I'd seen, and I couldn't get my breath. And he said, "Boy, what's wrong with you?" 'Cause my granddad never called me by my name. He always called me boy, and he raised me till I was school age. And him and my grandma, my parents worked in Nashville, so I was very close to them. And I stayed on his farm when I did before I had a job. I was younger in the summer, and even when I did have a job, I was on his farm. I knew the farm very well, but I'd never been in the woods that far, and it was always way too far to go. But that's where he suggested I go for a trophy deer, and I had three of my friends there with me. They were hunting different areas, but I didn't know what I'd seen. I knew it was a Bigfoot type creature, so I went to a library and started looking for books at two or three different libraries when I got home, which I lived about 92 miles from there with my parents and my brothers. So, I looked in books and I found these creatures, and there was a book that had the top 10 Bigfoot type creatures. So, unbelievably, but the second picture in the book was called the Woodbooger. And it was exactly what I'd seen. Looked just like it, except that one in the picture had red eyes, and the one I seen just had dark black eyes. And but it looked like that creature. And the one that I'd seen on the river, which was 7 years almost later, those look more like the type 3 or 4, the Patterson Gimlin type creatures, that type more looking. And the reason why I called them the forest people, because I found out that they're the only type that make the X's in the woods. They make large trees, they'll break them at the bottom and form the X, or they'll get deadfalls and form the X's against other trees, or stick them in the ground and make X's in the woods, or lay them across the trail, the game trail. And that's how I related to them. That's the type they are. That's their marker, which is an X. So they were completely different. I was quite frightened to death when I'd been fishing there. 3 weeks, my minnow bucket was missing. I couldn't understand what was going on with it. I was in a very, very rural area again, way out in the middle of nowhere on the Cumberland River where nobody knew how to get to but me and three or four of my friends. And you had to have permission to go down in there. It was right past an old water treatment or sewer type, some type of plant. And I knew the guy that worked there because a friend of mine, that was his nephew, and I'd been going there for quite a few years on occasion to fish. And these creatures, when I first seen that creature, it wasn't a large one; it was a young female, and she had stolen my minnow bucket again. And this time I'd tied a rope to it where it couldn't get gone, and she pulled it as far as she could and spilt the water, and I only had one minnow in it. And I found my other minnow buckets in the kudzu, which was right past that one. It was real thick right in that area on a game trail, and she was just leaning over, looking at me. And when I first seen her, I was just shocked. I was just thinking, oh no, I don't want to be around these things again. This doesn't look like the one I seen, but I know what this is. This is not a normal creature, and
Right. With the wood booger. So let's kind of dive into that a little bit more. So you said
yeah.
black eyes. What color was its skin? What color was its fur? I live in the thumb of Michigan, and we have seen every color um I can think of. So this particular wood booger you're talking about, what color was its hair? What color was its skin?
I've seen a lot of Bigfoot and forest people since that time, and I've never seen any color but black or
Okay.
black and gray. I've seen some gray on one before, a lot of gray, but it was black. This one, the wood booger, was black. Its face looked like black leather, wrinkled kind of like leather will get right under its eyes and around its forehead. Then it was hair down from there, and It was kind of empty on the forehead, but then it was hair on top, and it was covered in black hair. I had hung a drag rag up on across that creek the day before when I took my climbing stand and put it around the tree across the other side of the creek. And the drag rag hangs on I jumped up and grabbed a branch off of a maple tree. It might have been an oak, I can't remember, but and tied the drag rag, which you put on your boot when you go in the woods. It keeps the human scent from getting into the woods. It's more of a doe and estrus scent you put on the rag that
Wow.
has a deer scent, and I always use those because they seem to work real well. They cover up the human scent, and of course, when you're up 28 foot in a tree, they don't smell you as well because you're up high, and the air will kind of cut back the human smell. But I'd hung it in the tree, and I'm almost 6'6" at that time, and I jumped up and grabbed that limb, and when I stretch my arm completely out, I can reach up to a little over 8 foot, and I grabbed that limb and tied that rag to it, and it was there all night long, and it kind of just penetrated down that hollow and kind of covered up the scent in there, and hopefully would bring a male buck deer in. That's what I was looking for, trophy. And that thing reached over and grabbed that limb and just jerked it completely out of the tree after it smelt that rag and threw it on the ground. And I put the creature around 8 or 8'2" in that area, between 8 foot and 8'2", because its head was at the top of that branch, and it was maybe a little.
Wow.
And
Wow.
then it walked right back to the spot it was in, which was maybe 4 or 5 steps right in front of me. And I was on an angle on this tree. I'm on a 45-degree angle hill, roughly. It's straight up and down these hills and hollows are. And when you're straight up in a tree, you're kind of overlooking the creek on that hillside. And this thing knew exactly where I was at. I'd heard something moving twice when I went in that morning at dark with my flashlight. But I thought maybe it was a deer, or it sounded bipedal. I got kind of nervous at first. I knew my friends weren't there, and I knew nobody'd be hunting there. But this thing was so angry. I've never seen anything, especially a creature like that, and the way it acted toward me. It had square teeth. It did show me its teeth 4 or 5 times. It gritted them at me, opened its mouth and gritted its teeth. And then it growled numerous times, a real low guttural growl, like it was really mad. I thought this thing was going to kill me. I really, truly did. I thought it was coming across the creek. It was going to climb up this tree and grab me and pull me out. So, I'd never seen anything like that. I was completely in shock. I was trying to even breathe when I first seen it. So, it was hard to even breathe because I couldn't believe that I was seeing something, and this thing was that angry at me. And it had just run off 3 deer that were standing there eating acorns. There was a large acorn crop that year, and they had took off running, and I immediately thought it was a buck or a male deer coming in out of that cane thicket over there to the left of it. But, it had a huge body. I mean, the shoulders were big, the chest was big. From his knees down, the legs from there to the feet were not very big. They were thin, but I couldn't see the feet real well. They were in the leaves. There was leaves on the ground, but it was just nothing like anything I'd ever seen. And I remember just like it just now happened. I still feel that fear I had. I've never felt like that before around anything. So.
Thinking about this creature, we don't know exactly what they are. I don't know if anybody knows. We all have an idea. Um, did it seem to be akin to something, part human, part ape, part what was your feeling as you really think about that creature? What was your feeling? What
Well, I
was it?
mean, it's easier to look back now after all I've been through with the ones on the river and then other clans and other single Bigfoot that I've met over the years. But to see things differently, first of all, I don't think they're any type of ape at all.
Okay.
Zero ape. I 100% believe they're a human hybrid. That's my belief, 100%, and nothing can change that because I truly believe that. The ones on the river that I became super close to, they were truly my friends. I know that probably sounds crazy to some people, but I was there with those creatures after I got to know them. I left there and thought, well, I'm not going back. Not getting around these creatures again. But it bugged me almost a week, thinking, man, what are you doing? You can't be scared of these things. You got to go back. And I did. I took my shotgun and went back, and I sat next to the tree on a 5-gallon bucket and acted like I was fishing. And the little one stuck his head out again around the tree, looking at me. And I realized that these creatures are like humans. There's a lot of bad people. There's a lot of good people. This creature never got aggressive with me. It had another one behind it that was about the same size. It was a male. And then later on, there were several close by to it watching because they didn't know if I was trustworthy or not. And there was a complete clan or family of those in there. I don't know how many was in there, but there was at least 7 or 8. I know that for sure. But I heard them. I seen parts of them. I seen them looking over the bushes at me. The kudzu. I camped in there in my sleeping bag, 20 foot from them, and became friends with them. I was there every day or every other day until the end, until I had to work one time, and I didn't get there for almost 2 weeks, and I'd never done that, and just couldn't get there. There was too much going on. But I don't think those on the river taught me so much. I'd ask them many a time, where are you from? I mean, it took a lot of time and effort to build trust with these creatures because, first of all, they can read you. These creatures know what they understand, and they have some type of ability to know what your intentions are. And I believe they can feel if you have a bad heart toward them or a good heart. I 100% believe that. I know they think sometimes before I can even get it out, they've already thought about what I'm about to say or do. And I took them food. I never even heard of gifting in that day and time. And the only reason I started taking them food because I took me some food in there one day and I was waiting for them to come out. And I realized, well, this is not very nice. And I'd give them something if I'm eating. So I started carrying some things. And I realized that they didn't always like what I brought, but I found out what they did like, and they don't like it thrown on the ground like you're feeding a monkey at the zoo. They want it on a plate or a platter of some type, and you push it over next to the kudzu, and they'll reach out and get it. They don't want their food dirty either. But
Fantastic. This is huge for me. Wow. Because yeah, I don't want to get too deep into my experiences. It's what we can talk about at a later time. All right, let's talk about these forest people because they're forest people. And you think they're more human? What do they look like? What's their hair color, their skin color?
again, like I said, I've only seen black ones, and I've seen a lot of
Okay.
these creatures, and I did see a couple that had a lot of gray in them. I don't know if the
Okay.
gray means they're older or what it means, but I've never seen
And
a
Pat,
brown one or and there may have been a brown one in there, but I didn't see it. I only seen black, and I don't know why that is. Now, some of the black is a little darker than other black, so it can be.
okay.
It's not always the same exact color, but it may be a little duller color or something. But I asked these creatures questions for a long time. When I came in and parked my vehicle to see them every day or every other day, I parked inside a fence in an area that's it's locked up. You can't get in there. You have to go through a guardhouse. And they knew me because I'd fished there for years. And then I would park my vehicle down next to the gate, and there's a gate that goes into the forest there. All that land in that area right there belongs to that, whatever type plant it is. It belongs to that. Their land belongs to that. And the guard knew me, and 2 or 3 of them did. And I fished in there fairly regular, and they let me go on down. I go through the gate, and I have to walk about 200 yards on a game trail, and it gets real thick when you get to a certain area. Then it opens up again where there's a sandbar that goes out into the Cumberland River next to a creek that feeds into it. And these creatures, they would get excited. I mean, after they got to know me, I trusted them. They trusted me. When I started coming in, I would start talking to them. I just come through the gate, and I mean, there was nobody around. Everybody that worked in that shack was 200 yards away inside a building except the guard, and he couldn't hear me. And, you know, I just start yelling at them, "Hey, I'm here to see you today. Are y'all okay?" And I'd hear them. They'd start whooping and making all kinds of noises. They were excited to see me, and I was kind of excited to see them. The closer I got, the more excited they got, and then they calmed down, and you know, they peered out around the tree again and peeked and watched me. The three that I became fairly close to, and I'd ask them a many a times, you know, where are you from? Please tell me your name. I'd tell them my name, and I'd say, where are you from? And I'd say, are you from the heavens? And I'd point up. They'd just look at me. I'd say, are you from another galaxy? And I asked them that several times, and then one day, all three of them shook their head yes. I said,
Wow.
you're from another galaxy. I said,
Wow.
okay. Have you been here a long time? I mean, you know, I got 3 or 4 words out of those creatures. They do know English.
Wow.
They do know. They do know. You know, I had my grandmother was American Indian in part, and my grandfather too on my dad's side, and I learned a lot of words in that language, and they understood those words, and they have their own language. I know that for sure, and I truly believe they're from another galaxy, and I believe they're a human hybrid. I think they came here and probably mixed with the Native American culture because there's too many stories of my grandparents and their people talking about them coming in the night, in the middle of the night, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, stealing women and children and taking them out of the village. And you know, I'm sure I've heard that from other tribes at the same time. So I'm thinking that's probably where the human part comes in on them, and that's why they look so much human. They look human. I mean, they don't have
Okay.
all the same features. I mean, their hair covered, but and I'm sure there's ones that aren't as hairy as others because I've got friends that's seen those types. I don't know how many different types out there. I believe I've seen possibly 5 different types, maybe 4, but they're just like people. You know, we've got Chinese, we've got Vietnamese, we've got, you know, any type of Asian, we've got American Indian, we've got white and black. So I'm sure there's different type races in that culture also. So they're
Good
very
stuff.
intelligent. They are super, super intelligent. They have special powers, 100% have special powers, 100%, no doubt.
Okay, because I've had the just to reiterate, I've heard one speak. You know, if you've heard Sasquatch Ontario and Neff speak, that's what it sounded to me, very low. And then I finally heard their whoops a week ago last Friday. Huge, I mean, freight train loud. They couldn't have been too far from my tent. I have an area by me. Thank you for the gifting information about setting it on a plate. They've been to my house, and we're gonna get crazy. They've been to my house and they've mind spoken to me, and
I,
that was the
I,
shocker for
I
me.
have no doubt in my mind. You know, let me say this. I know once or twice, I have never mind spoke with them. They tried to mind speak with me. When I say tried, I could feel they were trying to communicate through that way they were trying to do it. And at that time when that happened, to be honest with you, I was frightened of these creatures. I was afraid to let them do that. So I didn't do that, and I kind of fought it back, and I wouldn't answer to it. So you know, it was. You got to understand, when I met these creatures on the river, I was still in a terrified state from what I'd seen in the woods, and I never thought that I would see anything like that again, much less some that I become friends with and that were friendly. So, you know, their abilities are amazing. You know, I took these creatures whistles. You know, I would take them all kinds of gifts. I mean, their favorite food, 100% by far, the ones I was with, their favorite food over anything is cantaloupe. Their favorite meat by anything is cooked bacon, like we all like. And they love jelly filled donuts. I took just about everything you think of down there, and there's certain things they like more than other, and those are their 3 favorites. And you know, I would bring them gifts. They made me things. They brought me 3 fish. They left them next to my bucket when I got there to see them, and they were still moving. And they made me a milk carton. They'd probably been in the river or around the river for a long time because originally it was red and white cardboard half-gallon milk carton. It had faded out to pink and white, and they stuck sticks through all four sides, and the sticks come out to form an X on all four sides. And they had
Yes.
little vines wrapped around that. That was sitting right on my 5-gallon bucket that I sat on when I visited them. And I left them. I brought them all kinds of different things. I brought them whistles. That was my number one favorite thing I ever brought them because I knew they were intelligent, but I didn't know how intelligent at that time. And so it's a little pack of plastic whistles you get like for a birthday party or something,
Yes.
and they got little black strings on them, and you give them out to kids at a birthday party. Well, I don't remember exactly how many was in the pack, but it seemed like it was 8 or 10 of them, and I just hung them on all the branches close to where I was at, tree branches around when I left, and see what would happen. And the next day when I came in, oh my gosh, there was whistles blowing everywhere when they heard my voice. I could hear a whistle. I could hear a whistle blowing straight ahead. I could hear one to the right, one to the left, one further. Then I could hear one across the river. I'm thinking, wow, these things are just unbelievable. And it was, heartfelt. It really was. It probably sounds crazy to a lot of people, but
No,
they
no,
really,
and this is what I want to hear, Darrell. And just because you said that, I'm going to throw some crazy stuff out there. They knew I was coming last time, and the last speak or spoke, however you want to say it, was they asked me to bring a cake. They said I want cake. I brought them a cake, and it's funny because for me, when it's happened a couple of times now, the mind speak, the first instance, they caught me when I was brain dead, walking out of the back of my house with the garbage over my shoulder, going to the back of the garage, putting the garbage way back there towards the alley. And I hear, thanks for friendship, scout and forest people. And I knew right then they were thanking me for gifting the last time I'd been out.
sure, yeah.
I had asked what their name was, and they said you can call us Scout or call me Scout, the individual. And then point blank was like, we'd rather be referred to as forest people than Bigfoot. So and then of course the last time I just went out and heard the howls for the first time, they had asked me to bring the cake. They just said, I want cake. And I was like, that might have been a young one. That one might have been a young one because there was a difference between the two separate mind speaks. So you're not crazy. I believe you. I've had it myself. When your mind is totally busy, it's like they know, but they'll catch you at the right minute when you're just kind of relaxed and and
I've
then
got
they'll
a good
hit you with it.
I've got a super good friend that's, Scott Pace is one of the best guys I've ever known. And he's down in Louisiana, and he and I are pretty super close, he and I and Dana. And he's the best mind speak person I've ever heard of. And you really ought to have him on here because he's absolutely amazing. He's actually had these creatures in his house. They brought the juveniles,
Wow.
but he's the most. I mean, the most Christian guy I've ever known, and he has some amazing abilities with these creatures. And Martin Groves and Ron Moorhead and Martin Unley have been my research team for so long now, and part of what we do. And we've all seen some really crazy things and different things happen, but the ones on the river, I will never forget them. They were so special to me, and all the years I spent there, nearly 5 years, I never got a lot of language out of them. I'd tell them my name, and I'd ask them what their name was, and I finally got 2 responses there. And every time when I would leave, I'd say, bye, I'll see y'all later. And as I'm walking out of the forest, heading back to my car, I hear all through the woods, bye, bye, bye. They're mocking me.
Wow.
And they know so much, and they're quite frankly they're more intelligent than some people, and I truly believe that they just have an uncanny way to know what you're going to do and how you think. And I can tell you this much: I 100% know if you have a bad heart and bad intentions around those creatures, you're not going to see one, and if you do, they're going to run you out. So they're trying to protect their family just like you would protect yours. And when you're sitting in your living room at night with your family, when you go into the woods, you're in their living room with their family. So
Right, right.
um,
Try to respect. Try to respect. I try
respect
to.
100%, respect the
Yep.
resources, respect the land. Don't go. They don't like. There's things that they do not like, and I always change into the same clothes that I wore every time I went in there because they seemed to like it better when I had the original clothes on. I'd carry them with me and change into them, and because they seem to like it better. They don't like plaids of any kind at all. They don't like plaid. They do not like any bright color. No red, no orange, and it upsets them. And I've tried to get information on why they did like it, but I never got it exactly. But I'm 100% sure that it relates to hunters wearing those bright colors. So,
Mm-hmm.
because they've been shot at by many people, and that's I think that has a lot to do with it. And for them to trust humans, it's very difficult for them to do that because there's so many people that would betray them. So I was very fortunate to have met them, and the female's name was Aliatha, and she was a young female. About when I first started going in there, probably around 5 foot tall, and when last time I seen her, she was over 6 foot tall, and the one behind her was her brother. I don't know his name, but the one behind him, who was about 7 foot tall, that watched them when I was there, his name was Tobias, and I was shocked when I heard them speak those words. But that was the two words that I got out of them the whole time I was in there. Maybe I wasn't quite doing a good job, but I tried. And they just didn't communicate very well with me that way. They would leave structures next to me and make stick things for me, and I found out what a lot of things meant. I found out the X was definitely their family marker, and they also use those X's to keep their young. And that's like a fence or a boundary for them where that X is. They don't go past that. So it's also a marker for other clans that they're territorial and they stay out of their area. So I had I had a very good run with those, and I'd give anything to see them today. But when I don't know what happened to them, but I truly think that they were probably taken out by someone uh, when I missed that almost 2 weeks that I'd never done before. I'd always been there every day or every other day, and even sometimes it was night when I got in there, but I always made it in there every day or every other day. It's kind of hard sometimes with a family and trying to work. But I told them I would be, and I
Sure.
did that. But when I went back looking for them, they had bulldozer had bulldozed that area back in there and piled all the sticks and trees and kudzu up in a pile, and there was markers out and with ribbons on them, and they were trying to build something, or they were thinking about building something back there because they had it formed out with those sticks in the ground. And I don't know whatever happened to my friends. So they never. I went back way back behind that area, and even across the river, and I never seen them or never heard from them again.
Wow. So they moved on to a new location.
I don't believe they moved. I believe that, unfortunately, I believe whoever came in there to do that work, a company, or maybe it was the people who owned that, whatever that was, that plant there. But I believe they seen them. They probably thought it might have been me coming in, and they heard them, and they seen them, and they probably called authorities, being the game and fish, or maybe even police officers. I don't know. I'm sure they were frightened. They'd seen these creatures. So, and I believe they come in and probably euthanized them.
Oh no. That's absolutely terrible. Well, no wonder they want to keep a distance from us. You know, if we're always coming in, we're reacting with fear. And we're hurting them or killing them. That's disgusting to me.
Well, I
Ah,
don't have 100% proof of that because I really had nobody I could talk to about it or ask about it. But I do think that something happened to them because as close as I was to those three, I just don't believe they wouldn't have reached out to me in some way or another because they have abilities that are unlike anything that we even understand. Their strength, their speed, and what they're capable of doing is pretty alarming how fast they can be. I truly believe they have probably 100-mile area that they hunt in. They don't
okay,
leave, they don't leave their area where they live, but they go as far as that to get what they're looking for when the game becomes scarce or whatever. And their number one food, of course, is always going to be deer or wild hogs. But I think they do probably eat some smaller animals, but I don't think it's very often. But
okay. I know here in Michigan, beaver's a big one for them. Um, they
I can
they
see,
do
I
like
can
the
see that. Yeah, I can see that. And there's a lot of beaver in Tennessee too, so it's a possibility. I don't know.
awesome.
Uh,
Well,
there
I
is
mean,
a there is an area of Cheatham County, Tennessee, in another place where me and a research partner of mine in 2000 and I think 18, we got called there because a friend of ours was terrified of these creatures looking in his windows at night, and his girlfriend was scared to death, and we found what we call a killing field there. There was 7 or 8 deer carcasses at the end of a game trail where it went into the deep brush, and there was like a blind built on the end of it, stumps and logs and brush piled up, and looked like they were hiding behind it, and they would ambush these deer coming down this game trail. And we found, I believe it was 7 or 8 deer carcasses there, or what was left of them. They were just piled on top of each other. So I know the way that by what I've seen, I know how they do eat that type of animal, and I do know the coyotes help them also, some of them. But
okay. Okay. I've heard that. Yeah, I've heard that too. Hey, Daryl. So I love talking about the wonderful side of Sasquatch, and I need to hear that because, as I said before, as humans, I think we always unfortunately react with fear. We come at these things with guns, we're scared, and when actuality, they are just as interested in us as we are of them. I mean, they've banged on my camper at my house, and then when I asked them not to do that, they moved around to the window and gave me a soft purr in the window, very respectful. So now I'm on a tangent. I'm changing the way I think, giving them respect. Um, okay, so we've established that. We've established a wood booger, the scary type, so to speak. We've established these forest people, which are the Patterson Gimlin type, you said, just to
they
reiterate.
they look like that type. Yeah, I call that by the book. I'm going by the book now. They look like a type 3 or 4 in the book, and that's
Okay,
kind of like the
cool.
Patterson Gimlin type they look like. And at that time, I referred back to the book again when I seen these because there wasn't any podcasts, there wasn't any. The only radio show that was on about anything that was out of the world like this was UFO stuff, and it wasn't any Bigfoot or Dogman. But you
Gotcha.
know,
And I mean, that's why I'm doing it. I'm sure not making any money on this, and I'm not interested in
you
making any
know,
money on this. I fell in love with this. I'm an actor here in Detroit. I do it as a hobby. It's
okay,
Michigan.
yeah,
So
I
so
understand that.
Hollywood.
I think that I've been doing this now for I don't know, nearly 30 years or maybe longer. I don't even know how long, but that's the thing about it. We don't make money hardly ever, and what we do make
Yeah.
is we don't do it for anything but just for people to learn and to help
Yeah,
other
I think
people.
it's
And
yeah, I think it's for the love of Bigfoot and the love of people who have had the experiences. So
well,
now,
I want people to know this out there that they probably already know it, but all these creatures are not nice.
mm,
There are some 100%, I do 100% believe will kill you and eat you. So
mm,
they're not all friendly. I 100% know that. My late great friend Scott Patterson, he believed they were all the Nephilim. and that's okay. I've respected Scott so well and think the world of him, always will. And I miss that guy. He done a lot for the world of that we're in. But
Definitely.
he spent a lot of time in the woods and had a lot of experience. And my gosh, I've been zapped 3 times, twice by Bigfoot and once by Dogman. I don't know how
What do you
many
mean
times,
zapped?
or
Infrasound?
infrasounded or whatever you call it, where it just knocks your senses out and your legs go numb, your head's dizzy, and you can't hardly move, and you're sick at your stomach. So, when you get around these creatures, they somehow have, if they don't trust you or know you very well, they're going to do something to keep you away from them. And sometimes I think you're a little too close, and that's when they do that to you. But
Gotcha.
Scott had been zapped, I don't know how many times. I don't even know the number. It was too many. But he was in a very high active area in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee, and he was on a trail that he witnessed the portals 2 or 3 times, and creatures come out of it. And Scott did a whole lot to help me out on several things when I had 2 rogue Bigfoot attack my farm, or maybe 3. I'm not sure today how many it was, but they scared my horses to death and killed all my cats, and it was a 3 or 4.5 month ordeal. So, but I don't know what I ever did to them. I mean, some of these creatures are just like that, and you just got to be careful when you go into the woods. It's not, people don't. What's really scary is you got Ma and Pa and their grandkids going into the land between the lakes of Tennessee and Kentucky or Michigan, some national forest in Michigan, and they're camping out in the remote area. They have no clue what's out there.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
we had people. Yeah, people disappear or die in
there's
the Upper Peninsula. Yeah,
yeah,
recently.
there's stuff in these woods that the regular people that work every day that don't dive into this or hadn't had some type of experience, they don't understand what's in these woods. There's stuff in here. I don't even know what all of it is. There's stuff in here that is like something from another world. I mean, we're raised to believe there's no such thing as monsters, but they are monsters. So,
Without
uh,
a doubt. Without a doubt. Hey,
I
you
it's
mean
it's a lot of people missing in our research area. I don't know quite how many's missing there. Martin Groves has done so much research on that, interviewed so many people over the years, and kept records of it and everything else. We don't know how many for sure, but here's the big thing that bothers me over everything, and I bring this up a lot because it bothers me because when you got missing people, now I follow Dave Pilatus. A lot of people don't like Dave Pilatus. I think he's super great. I think he's done a fantastic job, and I think he preaches the truth. And
oh yeah,
if
he's
if,
great.
if
Without
it's
a
not
doubt. He's
something you want to hear, then don't watch him because he's
right,
telling the
right.
truth. And when you got a place like Yosemite National Park, that's Yosemite National Park by Dave Pilatus, and I believe what he says because I know Dave Pilatus. I've met him at conferences where I've spoke and talked to him, and Ron Moorhead and him were close, and Scott Carpenter and him were very close, and I have the greatest respect for this guy. But when you got a place like Yosemite National Park that has the most people missing there of anywhere in the world, not the United States, anywhere
Mhm.
in the world,
Oh
and
my goodness.
nobody hears anything about this. Why? Because the National Park Service is a 2.8 billion. That's with a B. B as in billion industry a year for people coming in and camping and walking the trails and paying their admissions to get in to see things. You think they're going to tell people, okay, we got a 8 foot hairy thing running around out there that might tear your arm off, or we got a dog man that might attack you and kill you and your grandkids, or we got some other creatures, we don't know what they are, but they're out there. They're not going to tell people that. They
What are
don't.
your thoughts? What are your thoughts on Dogman? I'm here in Michigan, Wexford County, 1887. We've got a history of Dogman sightings. I've got a sighting south of me here in Sandusky, Michigan. A young one was seen. I've got a recent one standing in a church parking lot, watching the guy, broad daylight, watching the guy cut the lawn of the church. And then another sighting on top of that. What are your thoughts on Dogman?
Well, like I was mentioned earlier, I've never heard of a dog man until 1993 when my best buddy Martin Groves was in the Land Between the Lakes turkey hunting with his partner, one of his sheriff's department's buddies named Harry, in a remote area, and they were turkey hunting. They camped out. They were planning on camping for a week there, and the second night they were in there, two dog men attacked them, followed them back to camp, and a couple of Bigfoot in the field in front of them. I still today believe they were probably a Gugway and not a Bigfoot by the size they were and the way they looked, but I'm not sure of that. But these things tried to kill them. They fired upon them and they did everything possible to keep them from getting out of there. And as they drove away, they were just ripping their tent apart, these dog creatures. So, I've seen four of them. I've seen parts of them in bushes or shrubs or trees in the woods, and then they just disappeared, run off somewhere, and I couldn't tell for sure how big they were. I knew they were a dog-type creature because they had pointed ears and they looked like a dog head. But I've seen four completely. My first experience was in Tazewell County, Virginia in 2001, and that looked like a black German Shepherd, about four times the size of a normal German Shepherd, and it was a little over 6 foot tall, right around six, a little more, and it stood up on two legs and stepped across a fence, and it was just unbelievable. And it had been killing his family's goats, and they had asked me to come up and see what kind of creature they had, and it was just a coincidence that I met them at a country store, and they were scared of the creature. They had kids there. They lived with their great aunt, and this thing killed all their goats. And I've seen that creature, and then Martin Groves and I've seen two other ones in the LBL. The third one we've seen the LBL. Small Town Monsters done that documentary on us about that one, and I've never seen anything like that in my life. It was unbelievable. We're almost to the spot where he had his occurrence in '93, and it's, I don't know, 1 o'clock and 11 o'clock, I don't know, between 11 and 1 in the morning, and it's pitch dark in the LBL. And when you're talking about dark in the LBL, you can't even see your hand. But we're almost in there, and going back to that spot, it was 29 years to the day of that, not to the day, but of the year of that experience. And he wanted me to go with him back there, so I said, let's do it. We've been there for 2 days, and this thing was laying in a culvert, like a ditch, creek bed, out in the middle of nowhere. It went from like a blue-looking mist to a silver creature laying there. It was looking right at me. It had deep, clear eyes like flashlights, just clear eyes. It had mane around its head like a lion, and it was huge. The head was half the size of our truck windshield, and I shined my light on it, and it was just staring at me. And I looked to tell Martin, and he looked at me. He says, "I see it." And this thing, it's just like little tips of light on the end, every little piece of its fur. It's so hard to explain. And this thing gets up and walks around our truck, around the side of the truck on my side. Looks right at me. I was 5 to 7 foot from. I could have reached out and touched it. And I thought this thing was going to jump in the window on me, but it didn't. And it goes around my side of the truck. It kind of like glides across behind the truck, not run, but kind of like glides across it. And then it's doing the same thing up the side of the truck where Martin's at. We got our lights shined on it, and it's looking back at us, and it's not like it's walking. It's like it's gliding, and it's so weird. It's a complete creature. We can see it, all of its features, but it's also transparent at the same time. And then it goes up this side of this hill, and it's just sounds like a bulldozer, just breaking limbs and disappears out into nowhere. And Martin is so sick where he got zapped by it. I got hit too, but not as bad as he did. And he was bent over. He couldn't hardly drive. We were pulling back in on this gravel area. It was dirt where we were parking, and going back into the area he was in, and he had his experience on. And he had a real rough time getting him out of there. I thought he was going to pass out. He had an allergic reaction to it, and his throat swelled together and his tongue swelled up, and he was just gasping for air. And thank God we got out of there, and the creature didn't try to kill us. It didn't try to attack us. The first dog man that I seen, the one I mentioned, the size of a German Shepherd that looked like one, about 4 times that size, maybe 3. It didn't see me, but that creature seen us, and I don't know why it didn't try to do anything to us, but it just ran away from us. So, and the other 2 I seen in the LBL was in March of 24. March of 23. We had those creatures howling all around us. We were in the middle of a camp in the woods, in the middle of nowhere, and me and Barton Nunley and Martin Groves, and Martin got nervous, and we thought they were coming in to get us, and we got nervous, and he jumped up and ran into the woods and started just yelling a scripture from a Christian scripture, and they just completely stopped, and it was quiet, so quiet you could hear a pin drop, and I don't know what those things are. I think that's the first one I seen, no doubt, flesh and blood. The one that we seen that went from some type of blue mist into a creature, I don't have any clue what that was, but it was definitely a dog type creature, and it was big. The other 2 that I seen were more similar to the one I seen in Virginia, except they were a different color. And I just seen them running through the trees. So those were both in the LBL also. But Martin had seen quite a few there also. But man, I couldn't tell you. I don't know. I know they exist. I don't know what they are. I know there's a lot of things in the wilderness that we don't understand. And I will say this: I 100% believe that these creatures there's a lot more of them now than there was when I first got started. I have no doubt about that. So,
And that was the big shocker for me, Darrell. It was not only do they, well, once I received the whole kind of download from God that these things exist, there's multiple different kinds of them. I think the real big shocker for me is the fact that there are so many of these creatures and so many different types. I always say this, but I went into prayer one time, and I was kind of like, "Hey, God, what's going on?" And whether you believe in Christianity and whether God speaks and all that, that's a whole nother story. That's my relationship with the Lord. And I felt I asked God, "Hey, what's up with all these creatures?" And He said something very simple to me. He said, "Go look up how many different types of insects there are." And I knew when He said that was a reference to my upbringing in a suburban town outside of Detroit, Michigan, that I really only knew about ants and crickets and grasshoppers and flies and bees. And
right.
that's about it. So when
Yeah.
I jump on Google and I punch in, there's 900,000 to 3 million different types of insects. So there we go. We have, like you said, a multitude of different types of creatures, cryptids, whether you want to believe in the Luke 21:26 narrative, where it says, basically Jesus is saying in the last days you will see
Yeah.
monsters and UFOs.
100%.
That's my opinion.
I
He's
believe
giving
that.
us,
Yeah, I
yeah,
believe that 100%. I mean, you don't have to you don't even have to agree on your religious practices to read that from the Bible. It exactly says that. And
yep,
I do think that some of these creatures are evil. I do think some of them are demonic. I don't think all of them are. And, my late great friend Scott Carpenter, I respect everything he did and said and taught me and helped me with, but I do not think they're the Nephilim. I think the Nephilim is what the American soldiers run into in Afghanistan, which were tall, 15, 16-foot red-haired giants in the caves
yep,
over there. And
yep.
even the Bible speaks of them being tall, red-haired giants. So, I do not think I think they're human hybrid. And, it's my personal opinion. Some people disagree with me, but I think Dr. Melba Ketchum and the Genome Project proved what these creatures were. And if you don't like
Amen.
Melba Ketchum or believe in Melba Ketchum, that's your privilege. But I believe in her 100%. And she had over 100 samples of DNA, including blood, tissue, saliva, and hair. I don't know what else you could ask for to prove what she had. And they came back 58% human female and 42% unknown creature. So,
Amen.
I mean, 3 or 4 of them came back with the same results. So, how do you not say this creature doesn't exist, first of all? And second of all, we all know the scientific theory on it, and there's a lot of scientists out there that just hate the fact that there's a such thing as Bigfoot because, when I was growing up, they forced us to, tried to, I didn't believe it. I'm religious and I'm a Christian, and they tried to force us to believe this evolution wheel, and that's what the scientists
Right.
go by. The Bigfoot does not fit anywhere in that evolution wheel, so that puts them as an ape. So they're not an ape. So,
Good
sorry,
stuff.
I'm sorry to mess up your evolution wheel, but that's not my belief anyway. So,
And that's not my belief, and I believe like you believe, just to clarify that. Well, we're going to end on that note, Darrell. I don't think I could ever talk to you enough. I do want you to know right now that I will be showing up when you're speaking at one of these Bigfoot conferences, and the point will be just to meet you. So I want you to
man,
know that that's coming, man,
I'm
as I
just,
get more satiated.
I'm just an average old country boy, man. I just care about people, and I try to treat them the same way I'd want them to treat me. And I'm so honored to have so many people come and meet me, and come from so far away. When they do come, I feel really humbled by it, and it means a lot. But it means a lot to be on your show, and I'm always humbled by anybody asking me to be on their show. I've been blessed to do a whole lot of them over the years, and I'm always looking forward to talking about what I have experienced. I'm no expert at anything except saying my prayers, but
Amen.
I,
Amen. And you're spreading the news. I think that's the biggest thing. Like I always say, I don't want my boys walking out there into the woods and being taken by surprise to where it caused such a disruption in their life that it permanently affects them. I want them to be equipped to go out into the woods when they do go. But we're going to wrap it up right now. I got to get going to work. I'll never be able to talk to you enough. That's all there is to it.
well, if I could, I'd like to plug my please say prayers for my best friend Martin Groves. He's recovering, but he's keep him in your prayers if you would, everybody out there. And he's had a rough year, rough last 2 or 3 years. He's still got a ways to go, but he's recovering slowly. And I want to shout out to him because I love him like a brother. And same for my close friend Ron Moorhead and Barton Nunley too. And appreciate everybody. If you want to check out our group, Bigfoot Believers and Other Creatures, we'd sure like to have you be a part of it. So thank you again for having me on your show. I certainly appreciate it, and thanks to everybody that watches it.
Fantastic. And we're going to keep talking. I'm going to put you backstage. Man, Darrell, thanks so much. Yeah, we're going to talk more soon. That's all I can say. I'll put you backstage and see you in a moment. Well, there you go, everybody. I mean, what more can be said about this cryptid, paranormal, Bigfoot, dogman world than what Darrell has to say? He's at multiple conferences. Follow him on Facebook. Follow his group that he mentioned there. I don't want to re-say it. I know what it is, but I might mess it up. But we're going to keep promoting Darrell and just learning from Darrell. He is one of those people who has paved a way for guys like me to get the information out there. We need this information out there. We need more people to be aware. It's about safety. So, once again, thanks for tuning in to the Bigfoots of America podcast show. This was episode 34. Yeah, and we will see you soon.